Welcome back to another BRUNCH, your Sunday rendezvous, special edition playoff with the Montreal Canadiens. That's what we got today. Episode number 30 already, and we have the co-host Marko join us directly from Ottawa. And we're still missing Mr. ENORTAP. Maybe it will pop up. We'll wait for a couple of minutes before we remove the square between you and me, Marko. But welcome back. 2 weeks now without BRUNCH?
Yeah, a little bit of a break. Hopefully ENORTAP didn't burn his toast or something. But no Habs hockey, coach, but lots of great hockey for us to talk about this week. And happy to have this special edition, and hoping everybody enjoys a little extra Habs brunch in the first round of the playoffs.
Yeah, we're going to talk about Montreal Canadiens. And after he tried to go back in the room, he said he's in the green room, but I don't see him in the green room.
Weird.
Here we go. Then maybe we get him now. There we go. Hold on. Well, that's the beauty to be live. And he will pop up. No, Marko is now number 1. Go should be number 2. And Marko is number 1. There we go. And ENORTAP is in the house already now.
Good morning. Good morning, everyone.
Welcome aboard. Thanks to join us on the morning of the brunch.
Heavy breakfast this morning, ENORTAP? Heavy breakfast and slept through the alarm? Or?
I'm sorry? No. I've actually been in the green.
For some reason, we never saw you. You just pop up
for
now.
10 or 15 minutes.
Not at all.
It just kept saying, waiting for a host to let you in.
No, I don't know why. We don't know. I did not see all this.
It's okay.
Coach is giving you the Rick bonus treatment there, like a little hard on you.
Yeah, a bit too soft about that one over there. But we have a few people on the door. Welcome, everybody. Thanks to be with us. Like I said, 15, 20 minutes Montreal Canadiens. Then we're going to go to the playoff. And both of them are going to be commentary about the ENORTAP and, of course, Marko Larabé. So we welcome Claude Richard from Ottawa, neighbor of Marko, is in the house. RJ from New Jersey with all the update about the U18, what's going on. Thanks so much, Marko. And then RJ. And then William McClary knocked the door. So thanks to be with us. Don't forget, guys, to click on the like. That'd be awesome. And the news today is going to Montreal and new update of season 2023. So I want to get your perspective of what's going to happen during the summer. HUGO on work departure. And the triple I'm talking about, they are Kuryanov, Edmondson, and Mike Hoffman. And you can add more players if you want to. So my question for both of you is, what do you think will happen with Kuryanov, Edmondson, and Hoffman? Do you think some Montreal Canadiens can do some kind of move or not? Or maybe they can hold one of them during the off-season. So let's start with Marko. Maybe one player, so maybe what do you think the departure of the Montreal Canadiens for the off-season from Canadiens?
Well, I'll leave Mike Hoffman for ENORTAP because I'll get too emotional about talking about his departure, very torn about it. I don't know. So I'll leave that one for ENORTAP. But let's talk about Gurianov. Listen, it was it was a good move by Kent Hughes to kind of we all have seen kind of what Dadonov has done in the playoffs since he's been with Dallas, but I think still is a good return. It was worth a shot, but for me, anyways, I don't think Gurianov has shown enough in his 20 games or whatever he had for us to kind of even give him the RFA deal. To be honest, listen, we're already trying to kind of cement away some of the players that don't really fit our culture, and I just don't think that Gurianov does either. So he's a guy that can shoot. He's a guy that is pretty fast, but otherwise, I didn't really see much in his game that would incite me to even spend any more time on his development. To be honest, especially when we have some other spots that could be taken up by him for some other players that we want to really take a good look at. And then Edmondson, listen, he's a good warrior. But if you look at the left defenseman depth chart for the Montreal Canadiens estimated for next year, there's just no room for him at all, right? So I don't think we're going to maximize return for him based on his health issues last year. He still has a very good reputation with the playoff runs that he's been on, but his reputation about his health might diminish returns here, but I think we'll still be able to maybe get a second round pick for him or something like that, or maybe an able-bodied, kind of player to come in and help. So I'll leave it to you. Again, I'm a little too emotionally attached to Mike Hoffman to really face the music, so I'll let ENORTAP discuss Hoffman.
Well said, Marco. I agree with you totally about both Gurianov and Edmondson. I think Edmondson will probably happen through some sort of trade. Might be a part of a package. It might be just a single trade going. As you said, I don't think we can expect more than at best the second round for him. Gurianov, given I know he's not old because he's only, I think, 25, but he is making 2.9 million, and I think we can definitely entertain some of our younger prospects and give them an opportunity to show what they have, right? So yeah, you're right. I think we have to sort of cut bait with him as well. Hoffman, never fit our system, to be totally honest. It's not that he's not gifted in terms of some offensive skill, especially on the power play, but he hurts you very much so defensively. And right now, that too does not fit our system as well. He'll help some team. Unfortunately, his market value is not very high at the current moment. So it'll be interesting to see what we can get in return, maybe a third or something for him. But I think all three will probably be gone by the end of the summer.
Even a buyout doesn't hurt that much, right? With Hoffman, a buyout,
$1.6 million for the next 2 years.
Yeah, it's tough because if I'm not mistaken, do we still not have 1 year that we're paying off Alzner with his buyout?
Over and out this year. That was the last 800,000 this year.
Right. Okay. I thought there was one more year left.
Yeah.
The buyouts definitely work, but it's just that they linger on for such a extensive period of time. Yeah.
To me, that's really kind of break glass in case of emergency. That's how strongly I feel that he needs to go. As I would do that if you can't find any takers. But obviously I'd be even willing to give up like a 5th round pick or something, just a little bit of a sweetener to kind of get him out the door. But we'll see what kind of market there is for him. We'll see.
And it's not even the lack of production, I would say. It's more at times the attitude that was prevailing. And it's not a good modeling for the younger players that are coming up through the system and are currently on the team. So for that reason and that reason alone, I would get rid of him.
Yeah, well said. Both of you said the same thing. I think for me, Hoffman would be better out of the lineup or the roster. First, body language, behavior, and then the spot. He take a spot of someone we can give at some point, like RHP, whatever they are. So any other player you think the Montreal should maybe, we expect maybe Montreal go not sign or maybe let it go, or do you any other players?
Well, it's tricky, right? I guess one question is going to be about Belzile, right? So he's an RFA. To me, he's absolutely been a great Warrior, really helping out being the captain last year in Laval. So he's an RFA. Does he deserve a one-way contract? I think so. He's put in his time. It's a good story too from a PR perspective for the HABS. So I suspect they probably try to keep him, and maybe he ends up being the 13th forward. Maybe he ends up going back to Laval, but I don't think he's that attractive to another team if he's got a one-way deal necessarily. So it's kind of like an insurance policy, just to kind of have him in the organization. So I'd probably do that. To me, I guess it really depends kind of what goes on at the draft, right? And again, like we've talked about, there's certain guys that I think we'd like to move, like Armia, Gallagher, players like that. That's just the deals are just toxic to other organizations, so that's not going to happen. To me, what I'm looking for is more is Kent Hughes going to liquidate some of our surplus at the left hand with left-hand defensemen to kind of bolster up a different area that we need help with, right? So I think we've talked about it. To me, the odd man out is somebody like Jordan Harris. I just don't see that they would, unless the return is something they can't pass up for Jack Guy, because Jack Guy is, a media darling, and I just don't see that they would move Jack Guy. I think, ask people in the chat here and they'd freak out if you even mention that. So I think Harris is the odd man out. So, look for that maybe, like we saw Romanov move out at the draft last year. So if there's an opportunity, and I'm sure we'll talk about the draft here, but if there's an opportunity for something like that, I'd look out for maybe Jordan Harris being a piece that they move out. Another last one, Weidman. What are they going to do with that guy?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah,
right.
I mean,
go ahead.
I just want to add, obviously, we haven't spoken about him, but obviously, I think as a UFA, Drouin's time probably is done here in Montreal as well. And,
it's because he was already gone in my head, so I didn't put it.
Oh, wow. Yeah. I mean, and the only other guy is, I think he's an RFA right now, is Pezzetta. And I think he deserves maybe, a contract for a year or two, at least until the team is ready to assume, a greater role and move up the standings and possibly make the playoffs. I think he definitely gives energy to that fourth line. He's not afraid to stand up for other players. So he's about the only one that I would definitely bring back.
I think what they would do with him, they would give him only one way, not two ways like he did. So whatever they give him, like a $900,000 example, they can send him at Laval, and whatever they lose him, but they just remove the money. So with $1 million, but not say $1 million, but close to that, possible team will just let it go. It's just going to claim him if it's the case about that. So we have Luciano Graziano is in the house. We have N. Rabinov is in the house. We have William McClary, Larry Lavallee knocked the door, and MDG is in the house. So welcome everybody. Thanks to be with our Canadian Live show. That'll be awesome. And then we'll go to move on to the next one. I'm talking about the HUGO homework at trade bait. And I'm talking about Edmondson, Florida first pick, Dvorak, and again, I just give three names or three different things. They can add something. You talk about, Armia or any other player like you're just talking about Jordan Harris. So, and after that, we're going to start with that one, and then Marko is going to go with that after that.
Sure. I mean, we talked about Edmondson. I mean, that could be part of a package, as I said earlier, or it could be just a straight one person trade, possibly to a team that's a little bit more established that wants probably, a 4 to 6 defenseman that, it's got the size, can even
lean on you.
Coach. Yeah, exactly. And just help out the goaltending situation on that team. Florida's first round pick, I mean, a lot of it will depend how we draft, right? Where do we select? Are we going to stay at 5? Do we move down to 6 or 7, or possibly even get first or second? And that'll have a lot to do with it. I think you have more flexibility if you land the number 1 or 2 position, at which case even Dvorak becomes a little bit more expendable, and he's more of a trade bait than any one of the players that we've spoken about. Because he's a reliable, in my eyes, he's a very reliable two-way player. Gets consistently the 40 to 50-ish points a year range. So for a third-line centerman, he would work out well in most teams that are just looking to beef up themselves up the middle. So I think something will be done, but I think a lot of it will depend on how we draft the position.
Yeah, I think we all would love for the draft to be as exciting as it was last year, but I think that's kind of like a one of a lifetime thing, right? Think about Brian Burke, when he traded up for the Sedins, and it's not every draft that there's that something that crazy, so I think we're all grateful for that moment that we had at the draft last year in Montreal. But I don't know, the market for first round picks actually, is going to be a bit crowded. I think Nashville has one at 15 that apparently is on the market. And then they have another one in the 20s. And then I think also Columbus has a second pick after if we were to pick 17th. I think we're all crossing our fingers that Florida pick turns out to be 17. I just think the market is a bit crowded for that pick. But listen, if there's something there for Hughes, then we've seen that he's more than willing to kind of pull the trigger on it, which is great. So, I think that would be a great move if they can do that, if they can accelerate the rebuild by doing that. For me, Dvorak is a bit redundant now. It's been a bit of a disappointment for sure for me. I was one of the people that was pretty. He was the guy that I thought they should target when they lost Kakaniemi. So I think Bergevin didn't have many options, and I think he did the best he could in that scenario to kind of at least secure it. But listen, I just don't see any room for him here, especially if we draft a center, in the draft here. It's not somebody that probably will, unless we win the lottery, it's not really somebody that's going to have an impact in our lineup probably for 2 to 3 years, I would say. But even with that, we'll see what happens with, I don't know if we're going to be talking about Dubois later here, Coach, but we'll see what happens with that. Yeah, I don't know if I want to, but so, there's that. And then you've got Doc, and then you've got Suzuki, and you got Evans, and you've got Beck, and whoever we draft, right? So I think he's definitely expendable. My read on Dvorak's value in the market is that he's held in higher esteem by Western Conference teams than he is Eastern Conference teams, probably because that's where he played the bulk of his career. So, what teams, I'm curious, guys, what teams do you think would have an interest for Dvorak based on next year? To me, Colorado's, one that we've talked about. They have Eller. Does Eller have another year after this year? Or he's UFA.
I think he's got one more year, if I'm not mistaken. But
for which one? Sorry,
sure.
Eller for Colorado?
Eller.
Last Eller?
Yes.
Not UFA.
Yeah. Oh, he is a UFA. Okay.
Yeah.
So, to me, that would be a good fit. Colorado definitely, needs a little bit more depth at center. He's a pretty cost-effective solution as a third-line center, in my opinion. So we'll see. And I think this question is also tied to Sean Monahan too, right? What's going to happen with Sean Monahan?
Yeah, it will come in the next couple of minutes. So that's awesome. Great. We have Luciano, like I said, and then we have a few people pop up. We thanks everybody. Don't forget, guys, to click on the like. That'd be great. Subject number 3 is the not this one. Hugo on what contracts? Talking about Caulfield, Gurianov, and Monahan. So that's what's coming together. Marco, you start, and then ENORTAP, you finish.
Yeah, so we talked about Gurianov, so I won't waste more time on that. To me, it's I would be surprised, but if they do it, I'm not gonna rip my shirt off or anything. That would be good for everyone if they do sign him, but it is what it is. For Monahan, listen, it's clear that he's a very, very popular teammate, and we won't go into how his whole situation was mismanaged, not just by HABS management, by himself as well too, with respect to his injury, and how ultimately it cost us a first-round pick potentially this year. But listen, we saw what he can do at the beginning of the season, so it really depends, right? If you can secure him for under $4 million for a 1-year deal, then I'd be okay with that. But why are we doing that exactly? Or do we think we're going to be competing? I know Kent Hughes says that he's raising the bar in terms of expectations next year, and that's a smart thing for him to say. But are we legitimately going to be competing for a playoff spot next year? If we're not, then why are you bringing back Sean Monahan? Maybe to flip him at the end of the year? So
I think that's what makes most sense, is to try to build up his value and then maybe flip him at trade deadline time.
Yeah, I just want to add this. I don't know if you agree with me. I think Montreal missing a top 6 forward at that moment. And I think it will just fill up the hole without going left and right and get someone. And I think both parties are, how can I say that? They not like each other, but they are on the same page. You know what I mean? Monahan need Montreal. He like to stay here. And Montreal maybe need right now Monahan and see what happens at the trade deadline. So I think for me, it'll be the good thing. No, the amount, I don't know how much money. But
every free agent always says oh yeah, I'd love to stay here. But so we'll see. Again, it ties into what happens with Dubois too, right? Like if it depends kind of what happens, but he's certainly an option, and a cost effective one, low risk in terms of as long as they don't go term with the guy. Like I would be not super happy if they signed him to a 5-year, $5 million, like that would be terrible. But assuming that it's like a low risk 1 year or maybe 2-year deal, if it's a really low number, then fine. But again, it's not a huge priority for me. It's kind of like a nice to have. Let's talk about what everybody really cares about, which is Caulfield, right? So I think some of the reports out there, some insiders were a bit surprised that it wasn't done yet. They expected this to be done, and they were hoping to actually announce it at the at the end of the year, right? Like during the locker cleanup and all that. So kind of like a good news story to finish the year, but it didn't happen. So a little strange. And not to say Caulfield was grumpy or anything in his final interview, but he wasn't like, usually all you see is teeth with Caulfield, right? Like you just see his smile pops out, but he wasn't as smiley. And so I don't know, like I'm just kind of guessing here, right? But so maybe not all is well with that negotiation. I don't know, but certainly it's a bit surprising that it's not done yet. So the question is, what is the snafu? Like, what is it that they're debating about? To me, it's probably bridge versus long term, right? That's what makes sense to me. I would be, like I've said all along, I'd be disappointed if it would be a bridge deal. Like I think it's better for them to just kind of lock him in. It's gonna reveal a lot about Caulfield, about whether he is dedicated to winning, right? Like we've talked about Hughes and Gordon wanting to reproduce the Boston culture where everybody kind of buys in, and that includes how much they accept in terms of their cap hit. So I'm hoping somewhere in Cole Caulfield's heart, that he does the right thing and takes the number that's similar to Suzuki. And then if that's the case, then we're in business, folks. Like then we're showing that there's a core of players that are dedicated to being here long term, that understand that to build a winner, that you need to kind of like spread the wealth a little bit so that you can have some depth. I just don't know what it's going to happen, but my hope is that he comes in around, like we've seen the comparables. Coach, you've done videos with them showing the comparables, like Boldy I think is a good one. I don't like the Jason Robertson one as much, but so if he can come in around 8 million at 8 years, then that's my happy place.
I think where most of this is pivoted around is the duration of the contract. I think that's the sticky point. Not to make it sound negative, but I think players, when they're in this kind of situation and knowing how, an injury sometimes could end your career, the first thing they want to ensure is their own financial security. So if he can maximize two contracts in the interim time here, maybe because they can't agree on an 8-year amount, then I think that's what's going on. And obviously his agent is very hard nosed in Pat Brisson, so he's got some leverage there. But I personally anticipate it being a bridge contract, maybe a either 2 or 3 year deal, so that he can maximize out on the next 8 years after that. So we'll see. I'd hate for that to be the case, because obviously I agree with what you said, Marco, in terms of contributing to that winning culture and showing that you're dedicated to it. But I think, unfortunately, the money aspect always comes first in a lot of these players' minds, and not that culture.
Yeah, we've talked about this before, though. If you're Caulfield's camp, you just saw him get injured this year with a shoulder injury, right? So It's kind of like, how you have like a little angel on your shoulder and a little devil on your shoulder. So the little angel is saying, "No, Cole, you might get injured again. You want to take the long-term deal and make sure that you're safe."
Yeah.
Then you got the little devil saying, "No, Cole, you're going to be fine. Let's get all the money that we can." So there's probably this little debate going on, between the devil and the angel. So it really comes down to maybe his entourage, right? Like, what do his parents think? Yeah. What does the agent think? And with somebody that size, that Is it just take the long-term deal? There's no question that he's an elite scoring talent in the NHL, but nothing's for sure, especially when you've had this pretty important shoulder injury.
Yeah, great point. Just what you think about that. Like, let's go with a bridge contract, 4 by 8, example number, $32 million. And now he risked another extra $32 million to get 8 years at, 66 or 34 more, right? And then if you go after 4 years, the question is, do you think he would sign another, like how much money he can get after that? 8 million to what? 10 million? 11 million? He will never reach 1 million, my eyes. So if he add, example, like 2 million more, right? So he's going to risk $16 million for, he risked $34 million more. He refused to get to an extra, maybe like $60 million more at the end of his career. So I'm not sure if I was him or think about that way. That's the way I'm thinking as a business side for him.
If I'm the Habs, I get him to call. I get him to call one of his best friends, Hughes from New Jersey, who took a really nice, team-friendly 8-year deal like that. Like if Hughes can, who was in the same draft, was number 1 overall, almost had 100 points this season. To me, that's a pretty nice deal for him to emulate.
But let me just throw one wrench into all of this. And what if it's Montreal that doesn't want to give the long-term contract right now because they want to see sort of how he recovers from his shoulder injury? Because if it's a big issue and you've invested, let's say, $8 or $8.5 million over 8 years, that's really going to handcuff you over the years in terms of what you can do. So maybe we're looking at it from Cole Caulfield and his camp's position. Maybe it's Montreal that's stalling this.
It's a fair question. Like we don't really know Hugo's kind of philosophy yet, because let's not forget, right? Bergevin is the one that signed Suzuki's deal, right? So we don't really know their philosophy yet. Maybe we can have a little bit of insight by looking at what Gordon did with the Rangers, right? But I'm sure Hughes has his own very strong opinions, being a former player agent as well, right? So it's an interesting question. We're gonna get a really strong idea of what their philosophy is about kind of whether you lock down your young assets and the architecture of this team. But to me, again, like from everything that they've said openly, they want to emulate the Bruins, right? Like in terms of structure and culture. So to me, that means that they want to lock up assets long term and really sell to them the idea, like, that we're building something together, and that means that you have to give and take a little bit in order for us to build a strong team. So let's hope they're able to sell that to Caulfield. Comment on dit ça en français? Vendre sa salade. On dit ça en français? So let's give him. Let's hope Hughes is as good of a salesman as he is a GM so far.
Yeah.
And I want to add something before we move on.
No, that's
all right.
Pretty much it.
Well, welcome everybody. Thanks to join us. We appreciate it a lot. If you have any question, put a letter Q. I know some people ask questions. We don't answer yes because I know it's coming. So stay patient a bit more about this one there. Marco opened the door about this one. I think he read already my mind. Hugo homework, pick number 5. Who do you think? So we keep this 5. I don't want to go 6, 7, or 1 and 2 because we just say Montreal don't move allowed. Stay number 5. So I give you a couple of names. You can add more names if you want to. But Smith, Benson, Renbatchers. Maybe the name we mentioned the most in the last couple of weeks. Maybe it can add more people about that. So if you want to add that, what do you think, or how do you feel about Montreal Canadiens? I could also say, do you think they would go with a right defenseman versus a center or position? Is there something like that? So we can talk about this, and after we're going to start that one.
Sure. The thing with Smith right now is apparently, if you believe everything that you hear and read, is his value's gone up into the top 4 now. And so will he be available at number 5? And it begs the question, is number 5, then you're faced with the dilemma, do you go with Michkov if that lands on your lap? And I personally, I think if he lands on your lap like that, you definitely do take the opportunity, because as we said earlier, we're not a team that's in position of entertaining a playoff spot this upcoming year, or possibly even the next, depending on how things shake out. So that would be interesting. If Smith is available, I would definitely go Smith, because probably the best player at that position that's left there. Reinbacher is an interesting one, because he is a right-handed defenseman. He does have size, but I wonder if it's a bit of a reach at 5. I think at maybe 8 to 10 would be more appropriate for him. But then you never know. Maybe it might be something where if you take him and use him on the right-hand side, obviously, it gives you a little bit more flexibility in terms of what you could package and maybe get a forward that way from your left-handed defenseman that you have an excess of. So I would say, personally, I would go with Smith if he's available at that spot, followed probably by Benson and then Reinbacher.
Oh boy, this is a tough one. Like, so yeah, I agree with ENORTAP. If for whatever reason Michkov is available at 5, then there's no question I pull the trigger on that. So if that's the case, that probably means Smith is already gone. If Michkov does get picked before and Smith is still there, I do have my reservations about Smith. So I think I've been pretty vocal about it. Like, there's no questioning his hockey IQ, his talent, his raw talent is there. I don't really love his engagement at all. Like, I find that he doesn't engage very much on both sides of the puck. And the numbers that we're seeing right now in this particular U18 might be a bit inflated. Like, the US is playing a very, very weak division in this year's U18. Like, if you look at the teams that are in there, that whole line, for the US with Perot, and like, they're going to break records with this, but I think it's a bit inflated just because of the competition that they've played in this tournament. So I'm a huge Benson fan, but it sounds like there's some rumblings that Montreal is not going to pick this guy. He's just like, they agree with coach. He's too small. And I'm a huge Benson fan. So if the question is who I would take at 5, if Smith or Benson were there, I personally would take Benson personally. But I feel it's more likely that, especially with the relationship that Hughes has with Smith, being the fact that he coached him when he was coming up, there's no question. I'm pretty confident that the Habs would take Smith. No, I don't think Reinbacher is at all in the mix at number 5. I'm even wondering if Sandin Pellikka ends up going before Reinbacher, to be honest. He's also a right-hand shot defenseman. So I think Reinbacher comes out, like anywhere between 9 and like 14 or something like that. So I like those other US program players as well too. But
what do you think of Barlow,
Mark? He's a bit, to me, he's a bit clunky, right? Like, I think I don't like his skating that much, to be honest. Like, it's a bit of uneven kind of technique that he has. He has a great big body and he's got good hands, but I don't suspect a lot of the things that he does well will translate super well to the pro game. So I don't know. The big riser, I think, is going to be Dvorsky, but I don't think he rises to the point where Montreal should take him in the top 5. I know Grant McCagg's this year's sweetheart is Dvorsky, and we know sometimes Grant McCagg has a pretty good knack at being able to flag late risers in the draft and everything. So he's very zoned in on Dvorsky, but I don't suspect he will rise to the level where Montreal would pick him 5th. So,
and I'll have anything else?
No, I think we covered most of that.
Okay, sounds good. We have a few people knock the door. Welcome back, everybody. I think we answered to you, Claude Richard, about the question versus Sarkowski. So, by the way, the answer to you by the players. You have another person talk about, try to get the answer back. Devoski may be considered as he has a great tournament, but like a Smith upside for LH. Here we go. I got that one over there. So if you thinking just about Devoski, what do you see him to get out of the which rank do you see him out?
I think he could be in the top 10 or right if like he'll be right there for sure.
Yeah, I agree. I think he's somewhere between 6 to 10.
Yeah, absolutely about that. So that are great comments about this. We're going to answer to you at the end of the show, Rudolph, about the player like Malin. Chris says Pelica has dropped like a stone, middle teenager, the middle. Chris and some talk about Santon Pelica have a pretty good Sweden tournament during that time. So I'm not sure how drop he was got, but I think a lot of people are most same thing. Like Steve G go with Benson, Smith, and Barlow for that one over there. The case beta it will be 17 for Montreal. We cannot yet to talking about, but next time we have a show talking about where we at with Florida Panthers, so we give us an idea where we at. So I want to finish with this one. The next one, I don't know, have something here I can consider. So you have any question, ask it up. I have about 5 questions for you guys for the Montreal Canadiens, but we're going to it's a fire up right away. It's quickly. You don't have to explain too much. But let's see. We'll start with this one there. And I'm going to start with Marco. Can you often talk about the Montreal Canadiens and the sustainable success? How many years are you willing to wait for the Montreal Canadiens? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 years?
3.
3 years. Monsieur ENORTAP.
It will be incremental, but 3.
Yeah. I think it all depends on how you define success. If it's improvement every year, that's what you ultimately want to see until you get to the point where you make the playoffs. So, I mean, a true fan will wait. If they're building in the right direction, what does it matter if it's 2, 3, 4, 5 years?
Well, 5, 4 or 5. I don't know. Yeah.
Well, if they're building and every year they're sort of improving, because we lose track of the fact that the East is really becoming extremely competitive. We're starting to see some teams that are merging. Ottawa, Buffalo, obviously we saw this year with New Jersey. I know there might be a couple teams that take a step back, but ultimately it's going to be hard to get a playoff spot.
Yeah. The one team that I think I was a little nervous about Detroit, right? But like
Detroit,
I don't know, but Detroit, I don't know. Like if you look at kind of what they have coming up, like if you watch Michael's shows, during lunch hour sometimes, and he's going through the depth chart, like I have some serious holes there still, right? So I think Montreal's right there with Detroit in terms of where their development is. So it'll be, but I think Montreal might have a bit of an edge. They might even be. The thing with Detroit is that they have goaltending, right? And we don't really.
That was a great pickup in HUGO.
Yeah. All right. Yeah. Next question, guys, is about have the Canadiens remaining reasonable LT. How many points do you think they would have finished at the end of the year this year with a better overall injury? 68 to 72, they got 68 this year. 73, 76, or 77 a plus.
I would probably put them in that second category there, between 73 maybe and the lower part of that range there. I mean, because you can also make the equal argument that the kids that came up obviously were given 100% and wanted to showcase their skills as well. So, whereas some of our veterans seem to tail off at the end. So it'll be interesting, but I think somewhere between 73 and 76.
I'd say 77 and up. Like that's not that far. Like, that's what 4 extra wins. So, if you have Matheson in for the whole year and you have, Caulfield there the whole year, like would they've gotten another 4 wins or even 5 wins? I think so. Or stuck one out here and there in overtime. So I'd say right around 77, I think, is where they would have finished.
That's a very good one about that. NHL Hockey new report in the house. Welcome aboard, my friend. 20-month celebration. Thank you to support the Hockey National Show. NHL, always a great news to hear from you. Both of you are great about that. Thanks so much for all the inside the chat. Consider to click on the like if you don't mind. That'd be great. what is the biggest obstacle for the Montreal Canadiens pursuit? That's exactly what we talk about. The can use success for the team. Is it the goalie situation? Is it the defenseman situation, or the staff lack experience, or other team prospect and the Atlantic Division where they are now the Ottawa, the Buffalo, and the Detroit Red Wings? So, what is the biggest obstacle? Maybe push back now for not for 3 years, but maybe 5 years. Example.
You want to go first, Marco?
No, you go ahead.
Okay. Well, I would say it's something that's probably not even on there right now, and that would be trying to clear some money and getting rid of some of these bad contracts that we have. And that's the biggest obstacle, because some of these players, they're not tradable. You want to make sure you don't buy out too many players, because that handcuffs you in other ways. The goalie situation, I think, can be handled either through the draft or through free agency. So I'm not too worried about that. I do agree that the other prospects, the other teams, there's a lot of teams on the rise. So that is a bit of an issue, but that's not something that can be controllable by Hughes, right? I think he can only do with what he has on his team. And not having cleared out a couple of contracts this year sort of set him back a little bit. And we'll see what he does, over the summer to alleviate that if he can. But that's probably the biggest obstacle. It's some of these, Gallagher contracts, Armia, etc.
I'm not too worried. Like, the Gallagher one is the one that's going to hurt long term. Armia is going to be, he has another 2 years. So if we're right, if it's 3 years that we're kind of, going to be competing, then, he'll be gone by then, right? So that money frees up. It's going to be important to manage the cap. There's no question about that. But to me, in terms of the other teams, I think it's going to match up well. Like Toronto, I'm sure we'll talk about them in a minute here, but they're not on an upward trajectory for that much longer, right? Like they're going to have to do something. They're going to have to break it apart in a couple of years. Ottawa is probably the one that I think is trending in the right direction. Is going to be kind of on collision course with us and Buffalo. So my prediction right now, if everything stayed the same, I think Ottawa, Buffalo, and Montreal are going to be the ones that are going to be competing for those 3 spots in the Atlantic Division moving forward, right? So I don't know. And I said, I'm not sure about Detroit yet. So to me, the biggest obstacle, and it's an obstacle because there's so much uncertainty with it. Like I've said many times here, it's like voodoo, trying to predict how goalies are going to develop or finding them. So to me, that's the biggest obstacle, is finding the right goaltender to get you there. This year's playoffs, though, is proving me wrong. Again, like you got Samsonov and Skinner that were kind of picked up off the scrap heap and helping their teams get to the next round here. So, we'll see. But yeah, to me, goaltending is always the biggest thing that there's so much uncertainty, right? So it's hard to plan around it unless you have a stable, like if you have a Shesterkin or Carey Price or something like that, it's very hard to plan. It's very easy to plan in those cases. But so to me, that's the obstacle, is for sustainable success.
Marco, do you subscribe to free agency in terms of goaltending? Or you think,
I think I'm on
that's a gamble too?
I don't generally like it, like especially if you look at kind of what's going to be available there, like Tristan Jarry and goalies like that. Like, geez, I like to. It would be interesting to do the exercise of how many teams have actually won a Stanley Cup with a free agent goaltender signing in the last 10 years. How many teams have actually won the Stanley Cup with that? Let's not do the exercise now, but that would be interesting to see. Like, how many times has that been actually successful? If I had to guess, it's usually goalies that you've either drafted or goalies that you traded for specifically, right? Versus
didn't Grubauer do it last year?
Win a Stanley Cup?
Grubauer?
No.
Yeah, with Colorado.
He didn't win a Stanley Cup.
Last year with Colorado? Who am I thinking of? Sorry. Who was the goalie for Colorado last year?
Kumper.
Oh, Kumper. Yeah, sorry. Yeah. Kumper. Yeah, not Grubauer. Sorry.
Yeah, that's probably the only, and he wasn't well, did he get traded from Arizona?
Yeah, Arizona. First one pick, and O'Brien, I believe. Brand, he was the player in advance.
He wasn't a free agent sign. He was a.
Prior to that, you have Bennington, you have Oldby, you have Murray, Fleury, you have Quick, you have Crawford. All that draft by the organization about that. So most of them, they are right there. So great comments, great stuff in the chat, guys. I have one more question, but we're going to move on because we have 13 minutes. I want to respect the time for everybody. So we're going to go through game number 7 we have in front of us. So then we're going to talk a little bit more, have more questions for after that. So tonight we have Seattle Kraken versus the Colorado Avalanche. This is the prediction of the game tonight. So what your expectation and just give us who do you think you would think when, and then the chat you can do the same thing. You can give us what you're thinking about. Marco,
I'll let ENORTAP go first. He's the predictions guru.
Oh, I don't know about that, but I gotta believe Colorado. I mean, as much as Seattle's put in a valiant effort, I thought there were points where they pushed back in the last game, but Colorado just, once Makar is in the lineup and McKinnon and Rantanen are at full stride, they're a hard team to beat. And they're at home here. They have the experience. They have the pedigree. I know they have some injuries, but I got to take Colorado.
Well, listen, like we need at least one upset in the first round. Like I don't think we got it. Who? Toronto? Toronto wasn't an upset.
Well, we'll get to the Toronto game. Go ahead.
Okay. Yeah. But anyways, to me, this is, listen, like, Colorado should win, but if this was a movie, I would call it The Revenge of Philip Grubauer, right? Like Philip Grubauer comes back to haunt his former team, stands on his head tonight, and it would be a nice story, right? Like, listen, like it would be a shame to see McKinnon and Makar leave the playoffs because I think they're exciting to watch, but it would also be fun for the kind of fans in Seattle. That would be a good story. So I won't predict Seattle, but I'm hoping that Seattle will win.
Oh, you just hurt Steve in the chat.
I'm sure. Yeah.
I go with Colorado tonight, 4-1.
4-1. I think Steve G makes a good point, and we talked about this in the chat. If Colorado wants to win, they just have to break their will early. Like if Colorado comes in, they have a strong start. You just can't allow Seattle to believe for too long and stay in the game, or else then it gets really tricky.
Absolutely. It's about momentum, and if you give them that momentum, it's hard.
Belief.
Here we go.
Here we go.
The Toronto. The Florida Panthers versus the Boston Bruins.
Go ahead.
I'll take this one. Yeah. So you guys all laughed at me early in the year. I was like, hey, like, is anybody concerned about Boston in the first round? Like no adversity, just flying through the regular season. Nobody really believed me on that one. But listen, so I don't know. Like, I don't know. This one's a tough one. Like Florida, like I was joking around in the chat there last couple of nights. They're the Keith Richards of the NHL. Like they just never die. Like they're just always around. They always find a way to come back and come out with a new hit record somehow. So it's hard to count those guys out. But listen, like I think the big question: do we know if it's Swayman or Allmark that's going to be starting today yet?
I haven't heard yet. It's not
so
confirmed.
I would be. Yeah, like it looks to me like Allmark is kind of a little bit banged up here. So I know it takes some balls from the coach to do this, but I would come in with Swayman. I think if they start Swayman, then I think they'll be okay. But Allmark has definitely kind of lost the plot a little bit here. Like he's playing banged up, and he's just like not moving around the crease as comfortably as I've seen him throughout the year. So if Swayman is the starter, I pick Boston.
I'm going to say, I mean, when we look at Florida, it shouldn't be too much of a surprise because if you look at their analytics all year long, they never met those. Their expected goals for, scoring opportunities, they always underperform for whatever reason. And I think part of it maybe had to do with, goaltending situations, some injuries on defense. They had a couple big players out of the lineup, including Barkov at some points. So I'm not surprised that they're doing what they're doing, especially given that Boston has some of the injuries that they've sustained right now, and I don't know if it's through whatever flu's going around or whatever the case might be, but not to make any excuses. The turnovers, that's what's been killing Boston. They give up that puck far too easily. The defense, if you look at them, they collapse in front of the goalie all the time. So it gives Florida the entire periphery to try to move that puck, and they're doing a great job of moving that puck quickly. That the defense cannot.
That's part of Florida, right? Like that's Florida kind of really pressuring. Like why do turnovers happen? It's like Florida just plays a very aggressive. Like say what you want about Paul Maurice, right? But his teams don't play well defensively, but they're known to pressure. Like they like to play up pace, like upbeat, and they're in your face, right? So they're tough to handle. Like they really pressure the puck.
You're absolutely right, and they're a tough team, like physically. They'll punish you as well as Boston can impose on them as well. But I mean, if Allmark is healthy, I think you go with Allmark in this game. I don't know how you do not. I know he's had a couple of bad goals here and there that he's given up, but I wonder how much of that is the injury or it's just him buckling under the situation. If he is slightly hurt, I would go with Swayman.
Yeah, but I think no Boston. I think it's well documented.
I think Boston will pull it out tonight, but it'll be a close game.
So both of you said Boston. So we have one player, a specific player, going to make a difference. Who is going to be?
I'm going to say Bertuzzi. Like Bertuzzi's just been outstanding for them. Like what a great pickup. Like I know O'Reilly was a really nice pickup for the Leafs, but imagine if he would have been able to been on the Leafs as well. Like, yeah, I'll say Bertuzzi, I think will kind of make the difference for Boston.
ENORTAP?
I think maybe even Taylor Hall, as much as I've never really been on his bandwagon, I think he's had a good playoff, and he's scored some critical points. So he stepped up. He might be, he might be the key here.
I go with Swayman.
Yeah, I think it would be weird. I would be shocked if they start unless Allmark is 100% and there's no question about his health. I would how do you not go in with at least the most able-bodied goaltender? Like how Swayman, he lost 4 games this year. It's not like it's not a huge drop off between Allmark and Swayman, right? Like just go with your healthy guy.
No, and he played the last, I think, 6 or 7 games of the season, and he looked good in all of them.
He's a gamer.
I think it's a no-brainer. If Allmark is hurt, you got to go with Swayman.
Yeah.
All right, I will go honestly. He has to be a bottom 6 on my eyes. I always said that those games like this is always a bottom 6 show up. I think for me it could be Charlie Coy. It could be its fans right there for the Boston Bruins tonight. So let's move on, guys. Game number 7 tomorrow night, and they are desperate over there. The New York Rangers and New Jersey Devils. Game number 7. Great performance yesterday from the Rangers, and we are back. What we expect for me was I took Rangers in 7, and my bracket could be great, by the way. The Rangers, Boston, and Canada win. I'm 8-8. And I have 5 selections straight with the number of the game.
Well, there's no upsets, right? No upsets. Yeah. So obviously with the safety, right?
Yeah.
I definitely picked the Rangers. I think New Jersey, maybe the pumpkin. It's midnight and the pumpkin, has turned to its natural form with Schmid. You had a nice run. But they kind of burst that bubble last night. I still think he'll come back and have a good game in Game 7. I think he's a great goalie, but maybe just enough to kind of destabilize his psyche a little bit. And for the psychological impact of being able to score multiple goals on him last night, I think will really help the Rangers. And again, New Jersey's game, I just don't think translates as well. They were really able to use their speed and put a lot of pressure on New York. But I still, at the end of the day, they're a rush team, and it's really, you don't get a lot of chances on the rush in a Game 7. So I put my money on the Rangers and Shesterkin. Hard to beat that.
Exactly. Yeah, I would agree. I'll take the Rangers as well. I think yesterday we saw them sort of lift their game in terms of physicality, and that's the key. If you want to stop a team that's fast and loves to transition, that's what you got to do. You can't give somebody like Hughes all that skating room because he will hurt you every single time. And the Rangers, I think they won those first two games so comfortably that they let their foot off the gas pedal. And that third game was a bit psyche-wise damaged them, that 2-1 overtime win by New Jersey. And they did not recover from it. And I think they kind of woken up now. If you notice all three games that they've won, they've scored 5 goals. So it doesn't really matter to goaltender because they have the players. They have 3 solid lines. I know that third line is not producing at the rate they would like, but
Kreider is carrying them right now, right? Chris Kreider is just
Absolutely.
Zibanejad scored his first goals of the playoffs last night, but Kreider's like, I'd say between, if you had to pick like a MVP of the first round, would be between him and Draisaitl. I'd give it to Draisaitl because he's otherworldly, right? But Chris Kreider is like right there.
Yeah, I agree.
I mentioned this after game number 5. The physicality Rangers is not there. And that, for me, that was the key about that series so far. So it'll be interesting to see that. I go with Rangers. I always feel like when you have the best goaltender or have a better chance to get that W for your team, I think there's an advantage for the Rangers. And the only thing I would say, I think you did not talk about this, the experience to play in the playoff, game number 7. You know what I mean? Like, many of them never been there. Okay, Palat, but like game number 7, I think the Rangers overall, like Patrick Kane, Tarasenko, and those kind of players been with the Rangers. I think the advantage, the Rangers won last year, 7 game, the playoff first round. So that would be something I think I've had advantage a bit the Rangers for that series. For that, we want to finish, guys, with the Toronto Maple Leafs. About that.
Finally.
And they have 2 more questions. So, Marco, you can see 5 more minutes if you don't mind. That'd be great.
That'd
be great. And guys, I opened the door, and because my time is good, so the next couple of weeks, we want to do a show like this every Sunday morning. So, Marco and ENORTAP, you can join me live if you want to. I think it's fun. We can talk about the playoff, everything. So I will just do it again next week. I guess you want to returning, both of you, and then the people in the chat will be back next week for live streaming. But the Toronto Maple Leafs did it yesterday. They won the score 2-1. The last couple of years, they're missing 1 goal to get that game, that W. And this year, they got it. And you got the 2 other 4 players score, Tavares and Matthews score for them. And they finally beat the Tampa Bay Lightning. So for all the fans for the Toronto Maple Leafs and for the team, it's a big W. And I just want to get your impression about that. And then and I'm going to talk about them next week when the season start, when the round number 2 start. But what do you think overall for the Toronto Maple Leafs?
Well, listen, like, yeah, go ahead. You go ahead. You live in Toronto, so I think that's fine.
No, I was just gonna say, first of all,
I
congratulations.
heard like ENORTAP, I heard like 3 people surround his house in case something pop up, fire his house. But
no, they don't dare come around. No, congratulations to the Leafs. I think it's so easy to pick on them when they're losing because of a multitude of reasons, but I think they finally got that monkey off their back, and I think that's fantastic. Having said that, it's not full celebration mode here. And the reason why I say that is if you look at the entire series, and that's why I kind of considered it a bit of an upset, because I personally had Tampa Bay winning in 7, but I thought because of experience, because of the pedigree of Tampa Bay, the goaltending situation. But Samsonov played well. But if you look at the 6 games, Toronto won 3 of those games in overtime. And yes, of course, those count as well.
And on the road.
But the point on the road, exactly. And I think that as much as that's fantastic, it's also a little bit of telltale that they still need to step it up a little bit more. They're making, if you were to look at all the periods that were played in this series, I would say that Tampa Bay probably outplayed them in, I'd say, about 60 to 65% of those periods. And they're lucky that Samsonov and a couple players that stepped up. And I don't know why it took 6 games for them to figure out maybe we should take Hall out of the lineup here and put in somebody else. But it made a big difference last night, because I think they were overemphasizing Hall's side of the defensive end, and they were really picking on him and forcing him to make those kind of errors that he was making. So, Tampa Bay, I mean, your heart goes out to them in a way, because I think that given all the injuries that they've had, and the fact that they had to come from behind here, they put in a valiant effort. But I really want to congratulate the Leafs for finally getting that monkey off their back.
Marco?
Yeah, 100% agree with almost everything ENORTAP said there. Like, if you, by the way, and yeah, absolutely, congrats to all the Leafs fans. Must have felt pretty damn good. So, but yeah, like, if you hear John Cooper's press conference after the game, one of the reporters asked him, like, do you find it strange that do you feel like you played better than last year and lost, compared to, because I think Toronto probably outplayed Tampa last year and lost, right? So karma is a B sometimes when it comes to playoff hockey. But I agree. Like, to me, the statistic that gives it away is the amount of time that the team was in the lead. I think Toronto was, there's 3 categories: in the lead, tied, or the other team is in the lead. So I think Toronto was only in the lead in the series for like 23% of the series. The rest of the time they were tied or they were trailing, right? So I think that's a good picture of kind of what that series looked like. Samsonov, to me, is the key to that series. Vasilevsky was very average. He wasn't terrible, didn't give any bad goals, but especially at the beginning of that game yesterday, Samsonov saved their sauver les meubles, comme on dit en français, many times early in the game. So, I agree. Like, if they're going to play Boston in the next round, or even Florida for that matter, they're going to need to have much, much better starts. Last thing I'll say that I found fascinating, I was talking about this in the chat yesterday. Could we say, and maybe it's a stretch here, but did Sheldon Keefe outcoach John Cooper last night and in the last couple of games? Like, so, Sheldon Keefe, smart move, goes to the 11-7 yesterday. Really nice way to kind of get his big players kind of a little bit more involved, gives a little bit more flexibility, and is able to kind of kind of like surprise their matchups a little bit. And to me, what I found shocking is the Stamkos, Point, and Kucherov line. Just, nothing was going on with those guys. Like, they're playing, they're vets, right? Like, they weren't giving up anything, but you need that line to produce. Tampa does not have as much depth as it used to in scoring, right? So that line just was not going. So only in the second period of Game 6, when you're behind, they finally move. I think they dropped Stamkos down to play with Cirelli, and they moved Hagel to play up with Kucherov and Point. Yeah. That's like late in the game to make that kind of adjustment. So it's not that Tampa wasn't carrying play like we just talked about. They were carrying play, right, in terms of being ahead. But, again, little subtle differences like that. Like, I don't know if Cooper felt bad because, there was those occasions where he benched his veterans at the end of the season because he wasn't happy. So I don't know if he felt bad and they were asking to play together or something, but I just found him really slow to make adjustments compared to Keefe, who was adjusting all the time, other than Hall. That I'll give you. He didn't adjust very quickly with Justin Hall, but other than that, really good points for Sheldon Keefe. I'm not saying John Cooper is arguably the best coach in the NHL right now, but it's interesting, right? Because Sheldon Keefe has gotten a lot of flack for being outcoached, even against Montreal in that series. So kudos for Sheldon Keefe. He coached a good one this series.
Great point, all of you. We said this at the end of the day, right? Who was better, Samsonov or Vasilevsky? Samsonov. who was the best defenseman? I think Morgan Riley overall was better to Edmund and Sergachev. And then who has the best line produced for Toronto or Tampa? It was Toronto. So if you look about the key of the element, I think that series was right there. The last 2 years, the reason why Toronto didn't win, it was the performance of the goaltender. Now they got that one this year, around number 1 by Sasson. That's who, for me, that's the reason. Whatever they don't controlling the puck or the, maybe they was not, and they just find a way, Toronto, to take all the opportunity to score a big goal. And I think Ryan Riley was a one other big piece of the puzzle for what they never have at the end of the day. So great comment in the comments of great people about that. We appreciate a lot. I'm going to finish this way very quickly. I know I did not mention to you, but which team could win the Stanley Cup after round number 1? So we have 3 more games with Game 7, but you can include those teams. But which team now, take advantage of the round number 1? You can consider now the winner of the Stanley Cup. So you have a mulligan in our tap.
My 2 teams in the finals were in the bracket that we entered were Edmonton and Boston, and I had, I believe, Edmonton winning it. So I still stick with Edmonton in that regard. But a team we can't sleep on in the West, I think, is Dallas. I think that they really showed against Minnesota, who's probably a more physical team than Dallas, that they can play any style they want. And what happened is after that second game, they really got the goaltending that they needed out of Ottinger, and they're getting secondary and even tertiary scoring on that team. Yes, Rupi Hintz has gone off for sure, but Robertson hasn't really done a heck of a lot yet. But no. Sagan's scoring, Ben is scoring. You got players, even Dadonov has contributed. So I would not sleep on Dallas. Sorry?
Just like we all predicted he would. Dadonov.
Yeah, exactly. In the East, I like the way things are unfolding for the Leafs in terms of matchups, especially if possibly Florida wins today. It could pave a nice way for them, or if the Rangers don't win, more precisely. But if I had to look at an underdog here, I would probably go with, and I don't know how much of an underdog they are, but I would say the Rangers. I still think that they have all the ingredients to go to the end, but we'll see.
Wow, so ENORTAP, like he got to mention like 5 teams. I thought we were only selecting one team to.
No, I said the 2. Okay, Dallas and the Rangers. How's that?
That's still 2. Who's the team? One team. Who's winning the cup?
I'll say as an underdog, right?
No, it doesn't say under. There's nothing about an underdog in this.
No,
question.
You can get any team you want. You can select your selection at the end too.
Who do you think? No. Who do you think is going to win the cup?
Okay, Edmonton. I'll still stick to my bracket. Edmonton.
Okay. All right. Holy cow, that was complicated. I'm going to say New York Rangers. I like their path. Assuming they win today, I don't see Carolina being much of a matchup for them based on how they played in the first round and just with all the injuries that they have. So I like the Rangers. I think the Rangers match up well against either Boston or Toronto, to be honest, who I think that's probably what we're going to see. So I'm going to say the Rangers. Easy, concise answer from Marko on that one.
I go with Boston. That's my pick.
So we're just sticking to the bracket.
Which player are you the most impressed round number 1? You have one select player. Which one?
Draisaitl.
Yeah. It's hard to argue with that, but I'll throw Rupi Hintz in there as well.
Well said, both of you. That's good. I will go with friend. It was my player was Hans for me, but I will go with Ottinger for the Dallas Star. And who is your Smythe Trophy after round number 1? Who's going to be your MVP?
I think it's got to, so far, I would say it's got to be Draisaitl. I mean, when they put the type of checking on McDavid, and apparently he's got some kind of issue as well in terms of slight injury. Draisaitl's really picked up the slack, and like this guy, every time he has the puck, like all he needs is, you know, a sliver of a gap, and he'll nail it. He'll nail that goal. So I'm impressed with what I'm seeing with him.
Draisaitl could have almost won the MVP last year on one leg. Didn't McDavid and Draisaitl only lose the playoff scoring race by like 2 points, and they got eliminated in the conference final? Crazy. Hard to argue with that. You know, you could make a case for, you know, for, like I said, for Samsonov, maybe Schmid was right there. You know, like if New Jersey comes back, Schmid could be an interesting candidate. Yeah. Kreider. Yeah. He's like, to me, he's been the most impactful player after Draisaitl, but most valuable, you know, because again, like New Jersey, like they've had kind of a weird series. Like Heischer's really gripping stick, not really producing. So, you know, Schmid has really kind of kept them in that series. So we'll see.
Kachuk for Florida, yeah.
I think
I wouldn't put him as a winner, but I would throw in that conversation as well. Tavares for the Leafs.
Hey, if they move round number 2, I think you have to. He's going to be. I think he would be there. But honestly, I just give you a name. But right now, I think I have to go with Draisaitl. At the end of the day.
Yeah, absolutely.
Wow, it was a great show, guys. I appreciate that. You gave them. We get 15 more minutes. I apologize, Mr. Marko, but it was fun. We're going to repeat next week. Both of you just let me know if you want to come, and I'll talk about hockey. We're going to round number 2 now. Honestly, the last game is tomorrow, Tuesday and Monday. Do you think they start already Tuesday, or they got Wednesday? Do anybody know?
That's what I was going to say, Coach, is if there's any gap in between games, then maybe we should do an evening show.
Yeah. We're going to go back at 9 o'clock p.m. Yeah. Definitely, we're going to do that for sure. Not a problem for that. So thanks, both of you. Thanks, everybody in the chat, all the moderators, the people in the chat. We thank you. Tonight, we do double header. So I'm doing both game live, but we stop after game number 1. So we're not going to do this all night. So what we do, we have a 20-minute break, I believe. So we're going to shut down game number 1, then come back, and then I'm going to do the game Colorado versus the Seattle Kraken. So an extra 3-4 hours, but it would be worth it at the end of the night, because I think it's, for me, that's the best thing about hockey playoff, right? Is game number 7, excitement, fun. And the beauty of this is we don't really care who wins, because we don't cheer for them. But then you can sleep, you can relax, you can who cares score. But I think it's fun for us as a hockey fan to watching those guys, the player, the team like that. So we appreciate both of you. Thanks, everybody. We're going to look next week. Until then, anything you want to add or you're looking for? Here we go. Last question. What are you looking for this week, Marko?
Yeah, just looking forward to the next round here. If it's Boston Toronto, that's just going to be an amazing series. I'll be watching to see, Coach. Are you gonna stay hydrated with the doubleheader? Are you gonna just watermelon, or are you gonna be eating some crickets?
All about a watermelon tomorrow. About that, I bought another pack today. So cricket will wait a little bit. Oh, we have to put this on the side a little bit. I love the cheese. We cannot touch the cheese, but I love to watch the cheese on the table.
Okay.
Let's end up that. What are you looking for this week?
Well, we're looking for some great matchups tonight, at the very least, and then of course Monday between the Rangers and the Devils. So let's have some fun. One thing I can say for sure, when your team's not in the playoffs, for some reason you enjoy the playoffs in a much different fashion.
That's the feeling I was said earlier about that. You're absolutely right, and I've to correct me. And then we want to wish, first of all, congratulations all the fans in the chat for Toronto Maple Leafs. We wish good luck for the fans in the chat for the Colorado Avalanche, the Boston Bruins, the Florida Panthers, of course, the Devils with Joseph, the Rangers with Dave, and then, of course, the Colorado Avalanche with Steve G and Willie. So a lot of people in the chat, their team is still alive and they're looking forward for Game 7. So until next time, my friend, we wish you an amazing, great week. I can wait to see you next time. Of course, you have greatness inside of you. We wish you an amazing, great, blessing day, everybody.